Episode 4 begins upstairs in Sakura's room of the Avalon residence. So there she is sleeping in bed. That was until something strange happened. Remember Natasha's spirit from episode 6 in the last season? Well, she just appeared out of nowhere and for some unknown reason. She knew that there was something wrong with Sakura, so what she did is that she felt her hand on Sakura's head. Now, Sakura doesn't even realize it at first, but as the spirit knows that there was something wrong with her. And you could say, to coin a phrase, Sakura's been under the weather. So the next morning at the Avalon residence in Sakura's upstairs room, when Sakura woke up, it was raining outside. So Sakura was told by Kiro, "You might as well walk to school today, so you better get going." So after Sakura sat up in bed for a while, that's when Kiro could tell that there was something off with her. There was something wrong, and he couldn't figure out why or what is going on. So when Kira wanted to know from Sakura what is going on with her, she says, "Well, lately her head's all fuzzy." "Really?" Kiro says. So he went to feel her forehead, and he could tell that she's not feeling very well. And that's when Kiro says, "You know what? I have a second thought. Maybe you should stay at home today." But Sakura says that she couldn't because she says that there's a project that her class has been working on. So she has no choice but to go, despite Kiro's worrying that she's sick. So meanwhile at Sakura's school, it's now 8:15. So Sakura, as always, went to her classroom to join up with her best friend Madison along with Lee and Maylin. And I guess Madison wasn't kidding when she says it's a bit wet out because it was pouring out. Now Mei Lin speaks in her case to say, "Gee, you don't feel so well." Then Madison says, "Sakura, maybe you should have just stayed at home today." But Sakura brushes it off and says, "Don't worry about it. I'll be okay." And so by the time that Miss Mackenzie arrived, math class went as usual and the way it's planned. Here you have Sakura, her best friend Madison, along with Lee and Mei Lin, were sitting in their desks while Miss Mackenzie writes on a chalkboard. So Sakura continues to stare at the chalkboard and she was drifting out of sleep, if you will. And that's when Sakura realizes that what Miss Mackenzie has suspected. She says, "You don't feel so well," when she approached her. Now, Miss Mackenzie was soon suspected that she's proven right, that Sakura has been sick, and so she looks at Madison. She says, "Do me a favor, take Sakura to the front office for me, will you?" And so that's what Madison did. So now that Sakura had left from the front office, it is now 8:15 in the morning. So Sakura's best friend Madison, who's as supportive as she can be, just said to Sakura, "Oh, cheer up. I'm sure that your brother will be coming soon. He's on his way right now to pick you up." But Sakura insisted to Madison that she'll be fine, but as soon as she fell asleep and about to fall down, Madison was pretty worried. But luckily for Sakura, she landed head first in front of her brother, who later shows up. So Tori, who's Sakura's brother, carries her on his shoulders, and they walk straight home back to the Avalon residence. So long story short, back in Sakura's upstairs room at the Avalon residence, there's Sakura resting in bed, and that was until minutes later her brother shows up to check up on her to make sure if she was okay. So he says, "Okay, I'm going to take your temperature." So he gives her the thermometer so that Sakura can take a temperature. And he almost caught on to Kiro, who's sitting on her bedstand. So after Sakura had her temperature taken, that's when her brother looked at it. Well, by the look on the thermometer, according to what Tori says in his case, Sakura doesn't look so well. He says, "I'm going to get you some medicine on the way. And while I'm doing that, I'll get you something to eat." And so after that, he leaves Sakura's room. "I'll be back soon," Tori says. And then he took one last look at Kiro, and then after that, he left the room. For Kiro, that was too close of a call the moment that Tori left the room. He says to himself, one of these days, Tori's going to catch on to me pretty quick. But meanwhile, outside, what Sakura and Kiro doesn't realize yet, but there is something weird going on that's happening outside. And for some unknown reason, the sky became purple. What is going on out there? So back with Sakura in her upstairs room at the Avalon residence, that's when Sakura woke up and sensed something really strange going on outside. She sensed a you know what. So Kiro, who looked outside the window, and that's when he knows that Sakura was proven right. He too sensed the you know what that's going on outside. So as Sakura went ahead to look out the window, that's when Kiro says, "Wait a minute, you shouldn't be out of bed." But then both Kiro and Sakura looked up in the sky and it's all purple. Something weird is going on there. So Sakura wants to know what kind of card is it? Well, Kiro says, if I'm not mistaken, it is definitely the cloud. And that's why the sky just now is just turned purple. Just when Sakura was about to go outside from the window, that's when Kiro says, "Whoa, wait a minute. What do you think you're doing? Where are you going?" "Well," Sakura said, "I have a car to catch." "Are you crazy?" Kiro asked. "Besides," Kiro says, "you're sick enough as it is. You're going to catch pneumonia. Or worse," he said. "So how much time do we have?" Sakura says. "Not very much, I'm afraid," Kiro said. "The way I figure it," Kiro says, "the storm's getting stronger by the minute, so we have to hurry and catch that card and fast." So Sakura knows that she needs a plan, but she knows that she has to come up with it and fast because there's no telling what's going to happen when her brother comes back to find out she's missing. So Kiro, who is worried, says if your brother finds out that you're missing, he's going to be suspicious and think that something must be off somehow. So we know what this means. Sakura has a plan to use the mirror card to project her double. You remember from episode 25 in the last season, the same double that hurt Tori's leg? Well, Sakura was asking her double the moment she used the mirror card to do a favor for her, is to distract her brother, while her real self goes outside to catch the cloud card. But can she do it in time? Well, with the fly card, she's now on her way. So Kiro told Sakura, "Okay, that's a very good plan, but once the cloud is captured, I want you back in bed." "Okay," Sakura says. So Sakura now knows that there's no time to lose. So back at Sakura's upstairs room at the Avalon residence, while Sakura's double was taking her place, thanks to the mirror card, of course. So by the time that Tori shows up, that's Sakura's brother, of course, he shows up with Sakura's medicine and a bowl of soup for her. So he's asking if she could sit up, and so that's what she did. At first, Tori was going to say something, but then he decides to say nothing. He thought that there was something off, but he decides to think nothing of it. So he gives Sakura a bowl of soup for her to eat, or so he thought. So back with the real Sakura, who is outside, she's now face to face with a cloud card. And then she joins up with Lee and Mei Lin, who are also there. So, although despite a minor setback, luckily for Lee, he manages to save her when he did by using one of the element power cards of wind, of course. So now that Sakura was rescued by Lee, and luckily he did, that's when, as I was saying, she joins up with Lee and Mei Lin that were on top of the rooftop of a building, which I'm not sure. And so Kiro says, "Well, well, well, isn't that the kid and his girlfriend?" he said. Oh, by the way, Sakura's still in her pajamas, and that's when Maylin approached her. She says, "Well, by the looks of it, I say you're still not feeling well," she says. So Lee pleaded his case to Sakura to say, "You're really foolish, do you know that? How careless of you to not take care of your health. Don't you realize what's going to happen to you?" he said. So then it's Sakura's turn to plead her case to say, "Listen to me, Lee. I know this sounds crazy, but I had no choice. Because if we don't do something fast, then this could mean bad news. The storm's going to get worse and worse, and it's going to flood the entire town." "I mean, we don't want that to happen, do we?" Sakura said. And that's when Lee realizes that what Sakura said was true. He was in shock. So meanwhile, back at Sakura's upstairs room at the Avalon residence with Tori, who's Sakura's brother, and of course the fake Sakura who just finished her soup. So Sakura's brother says, "Gee, you must be really hungry. I'm gonna go downstairs to get you some more, okay?" But the fake Sakura, before Tori can leave the room, she says, "Wait a minute, what about my medicine?" she asked. "What do you need medicine for?" Tori says. "You know you shouldn't be taking it if you're not really sick." "What are you anyway?" he asked. And then Tori remembered. It was the same fake Sakura that he had encountered since episode 25 from season 1. When flashback, you remember when he was following the fake Sakura instead of his real deal. And so when the real deal Sakura shows up, she realized that what the mirror card did with her brother. And that's when she should have realized right then by the time she looked at the three cards from her upstairs room: shadow, water, and illusion. And that she should have also realized that it was the mirror card. And that's why it impersonated to be her. And so when the mirror card's form shows up, it kissed Tori on his head and apologized. And that's when she captured the mirror card. Then back to the present in Sakura's upstairs room at the Avalon residence. That's when the fake Sakura has no point in denying it, and that she and Tori had met before, and that Tori has known all along what it really was. Then Tori also had a suspicion. He knows what the real Sakura's been up to lately, but he's not going to tell the fake Sakura that. At least not yet, anyway. So before Tori can leave, he says, "Do me a favor," to fake Sakura. "Don't tell my real sister that I've been on to her lately." Then he told the fake Sakura that he hasn't told his real sister yet that he has the same ability to sense things just like she did. And that's exactly why, up to 4 years ago, that Miss Mackenzie has asked Tori to do this favor for her to not tell his sister about it. At least he hasn't yet. So after the fake Sakura had thought about the favor that Tori has asked for her, she ultimately agreed not to tell the real Sakura about it, at least not yet. So Tori passed the fake Sakura on ahead and thanked her for it, and so after that he left the room. So speaking of the real Sakura, let's go back with her, Lee, and Maylin and Kiro. And as you may have guessed it, Lee has an idea to cut through all the clouds with his sword, of course, and so that's what he did. So Lee uses the element of power of fire from his sword, of course. That was until there's only one cloud left. Well, that in the form that's inside. So Sakura suspected it must be the rain. But Kiro says, "No, no, this one's different." So Sakura knows what to do. She was going to seal the cloud. She almost collapsed until Maylin went up behind her and caught her just in time. "Thanks, Maylin," Sakura said. So now with Maylin's help, that's when Sakura captures the cloud card, in which she did. Well, at first, Sakura was going to make the cloud card her 36th card. She wants to give it to Lee to make it his 6th card. But much to Maylin's dismay, he says, "No, no, you can keep it. Besides, he says in his case that she deserved it anyway, even though she's not feeling very well." So, yep, you've heard right. The cloud makes it number 36 on her list. So, with Lee, he still has 5 cards on his list. So, Lee was right in his case. Sakura did deserve to keep the cloud card after all. So, long story short, back at the Avalon residence in Sakura's upstairs room, by the time that the real Sakura came back, I guess you could say that her double is no longer needed. So, the mirror card goes back into her card form. That counts for the real Sakura to get back in bed so she could try to get better. So long story short, now that Kiro's outside of the Avalon residence, he told Lee and Maylin the good news that Sakura's going to go back in bed so she could try to get well. That's a huge relief for them. So Maylin wants to know from Kiro, how come you're not inside with her? Well, Carol just told Maylin and Lee the bad news. He said that for some reason, Sakura's brother almost caught up with him that time. So Carol made a suggestion with Maylin if he could stay with her and Lee for a while. Next thing you know, both Carol and Maylin were arguing with each other. So back with Sakura in her upstairs room at the Avalon residence, she was sleeping in bed just as she was before. So when Sakura's brother Tori shows up minutes later to take Sakura's temperature, it was worse than he thought. He knew that Sakura's not getting any better. She gets worse and worse by the minute. So, as a precaution, he decides to call the doctor, hoping that he'll show up later to make Sakura feel better. But before Tor could leave the room by surprise, he saw the exact same spirit of both his and Sakura's late mother, just as he did before since episode 6 in the last season. And guess what? She appeared again, just as she did the day before. And she did the same thing to Sakura as she did earlier that day when she got sick. She places her hand on Sakura's head. So, after Sakura looks at the spirit of both her and Tori's late mother, who places her hand on her head just like she did the day before, she went right back to sleep. Before Natasha's spirit can leave, she tells Sakura, "You're going to be all right now." And then she looks at Tori, who's Sakura's brother. He said hello to her. Then Natasha's spirit told Tori that she's been worried about Sakura all day long, but she'll be all right now. And of course, the last thing she said to Sakura before she left was to take care of yourself. And so after that, she left. So we know what this means. I guess Tori doesn't need to call the doctor after all. So the very next morning, well, good news for Sakura. She's all better now. She's downstairs to join up with her father, Aiden, and of course her brother, Tori. The first thing she did was after she goes downstairs to say good morning to them. So Aiden wanted to know from Sakura if she felt a lot better now. As a matter of fact, I do feel a lot better. Thanks for asking, Sakura said to her father, and let's not forget Tori's father too. I'm glad to hear it, Aiden says, because he says in his case he's been worried about her. I guess you know the saying that rest is the best medicine, right? And Sakura happens to agree with both her and Tori's father. Even better, Sakura is feeling a little hungry, so you know what this means. She got her appetite back, according to what Tori says in his case. But before Sakura can eat a meal, what she did next was to look at the picture of both her and Tori's late mother, Natasha. Well, the first thing Sakura did was to thank her late mother, Natasha, for making her feel better. So Sakura's brother, Tori, wants to know what she's doing that for. Well, Sakura explains to her brother in her case, and I guess she's not kidding when she said it. She says that she must have had a guardian angel watching over her, meeting both her and Tori's late mother, Natasha. And of course, Tori happens to agree with her, so you know what this means. It's breakfast time in the dining room at the Avalon residence. So, yep, you've heard right. Sakura's all better now, since she has 36 cards on her list so far, but there's still a lot more to catch. So that ends episode 4.